Chrisean. Chrisean. Here. Come on, get out of here. Come on. I don't want to be famous no more, bro. I don't want to be.
Nobody warned her. Nobody texted her. Nobody leaked a screenshot first. 1 minute the internet was arguing about hairstyles and baby names, and the next minute Boom-In interview dropped like a grenade with the pin already pulled. And suddenly, Chrisean Rock wasn't trending for chaos. She was trending for shock. This wasn't a cute little he said, she said. This wasn't a messy Instagram live that disappears in 24 hours. This was a calculated, sit down, lights on, mic hot interview where an ex decided to rewrite history in permanent ink. The kind of interview that makes PR teams faint and lawyers reach for antacids. You could practically hear the record scratch across social media. Fans froze mid-scroll. Group chats lit up like Christmas trees. And Chrisean, allegedly blindsided, watching her past get dragged into the spotlight like it owed rent. What was said wasn't just messy. It was dark. The kind of dark that makes reality TV look like Sesame Street. Accusations layered on top of accusations. Subtle threats disguised as my truth, and just enough vagueness to make everyone fill in the blanks with their worst imagination. Nobody saw this coming, and that's exactly why it landed like a wrecking ball wrapped in velvet. Chrisean Rock has lived her life in public chaos long enough that fans thought they'd seen every possible scandal, every unpredictable turn, every emotional explosion. But this time, the chaos didn't come from her mouth, her Instagram, or a late-night live session fueled by adrenaline and emotion. It came from the one place she couldn't control, someone else's carefully planned interview. This wasn't a sloppy rant. This wasn't an emotional meltdown. This was precision, calm lighting, measured tone. A chair pulled up just close enough to the mic to feel intimate. And then the words started flowing, not like a flood, but like poison dripping slowly into the conversation. The kind of delivery that makes people lean in and think, oh, this might be real. The timing alone raised eyebrows. Just when Chrisean appeared quieter than usual, focused on reshaping her image, recalibrating her energy, and stepping away from non-stop drama, the interview dropped. No warning, no teaser, no chance to prepare the narrative. It was as if someone waited until she exhaled before hitting publish. And the internet reacted instantly. Clips circulated faster than context ever could. 10-second soundbites became full-blown accusations in the court of public opinion. Pauses were interpreted as guilt. Facial expressions were analyzed like ancient hieroglyphs. Every word was treated like a confession, even when it wasn't, especially when it wasn't. What made the situation explode wasn't just what was said, it was how it was framed. The ex didn't come off angry. There was no visible bitterness, no obvious vendetta. Instead, there was that dangerous calm that makes accusations feel more believable. The "I'm not here to bash anyone" energy that always precedes the most damaging statements imaginable. That's when the narrative began to shift. Stories fans thought they already understood were suddenly reframed. Moments once dismissed as chaotic humor were now described as calculated behavior. Emotional outbursts were rebranded as manipulation. Private conflicts were repackaged as patterns. And suddenly, the audience wasn't just watching a scandal unfold, they were being invited to rewatch the entire past through a darker lens. Chrisean's silence poured gasoline on the fire. No response. No denial. No sarcasm. No tears. Nothing. And in the digital age, silence isn't neutral, it's suspicious. Fans started speculating wildly. Some assumed legal reasons. Others believed she was strategizing. And the loudest voices, as always, decided the silence meant guilt. That's when the dogpiling began. Old clips resurfaced, like they'd been waiting in a digital filing cabinet. Labeled just in case, screenshots from years ago were Dragged into 2026 conversations. Comments once praised were now dissected for hidden meaning. The internet doesn't forget but worse. It loves to reinterpret. The interview itself grew darker as it went on. What started as my side of the story slowly drifted into territory that felt heavier, more personal, more disturbing. Allegations hinted at emotional damage. Claims suggested behind-the-scenes behavior that didn't match the public image. Nothing was outright stated in a way that could be easily disproven, but everything was implied just enough to make imaginations run wild. That's the most dangerous kind of accusation. The kind that lets the speaker say, "I never said that." Well, the audience absolutely heard it. And while all this unfolded, Chrisean was nowhere to be found. Fans began arguing among themselves. One side insisted this was a calculated smear, a bitter ex grabbing attention and clout. The other side claimed the calm delivery meant truth. Neutral viewers sat back, watching the fandom tear itself apart like it was a Netflix documentary released in real time. Memes popped up within hours. Dark ones, the kind that stop being funny halfway through your laugh. Jokes layered with judgment. Sarcasm dripping with cruelty. Humor used as a weapon instead of relief. Once memes turn dark, the internet has already chosen violence. The worst part? The interview didn't need proof. It didn't need receipts. It didn't even need consistency. It only needed doubt. And doubt spreads faster than facts ever will. By the end of the first 24 hours, the conversation had completely changed. This wasn't about messy relationships anymore. This wasn't reality TV chaos. This was about character, credibility, and control of the narrative. The spotlight had shifted, and suddenly Chrisean wasn't the loudest voice in the room. She was the subject. And when someone else tells your story before you do, you're already losing. What made this moment especially brutal was how familiar it felt. The public had seen this movie before. A woman with a loud past, a man with a calm interview, a story framed as truth finally coming out. The script writes itself, and the audience thinks they know the ending. But here's the thing, this story wasn't over. Not even close. Because while the interview painted Chrisean as reckless, unstable, and manipulative, it also cracked something open. Viewers started asking questions the interview didn't answer. Timelines didn't fully add up. Motivations felt convenient. And as much as the internet loves a villain, it loves a twist even more. Still, at this stage, none of that mattered. Perception was already shifting. Brands watched quietly. Fans chose sides. And Chrisean's silence became the loudest unanswered question in the room. Whatever her response would be, if it came at all, it would have to fight against an interview that already shaped the battlefield. Because once a narrative turns dark, it doesn't need truth to survive. It only needs attention. And attention was exactly what this interview captured. By the time the first day ended, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another chapter in her chaotic story. This was a pivot point. A moment that would either break the image completely or set the stage for an even more explosive counterstrike. Once the interview finished its first lap around the internet, things didn't cool down, they combusted. This is the stage where a scandal stops being personal and becomes public property. The moment when opinions multiply faster than facts. And everyone suddenly turns into a body language expert, a trauma analyst, and a moral judge with a Wi-Fi connection. Celebrity reactions started rolling in without anyone ever saying names. You know the type. The vague tweets that scream louder than direct accusations. I've been saying this for years. Y'all finally waking up. Protect your peace from toxic people. Nobody tagged anyone, but everybody knew exactly who it was about. Subtle enough to dodge accountability. Loud enough to feed the fire. Then came the podcast class. Suddenly, every microphone on the planet had thoughts. Some hosts leaned into sympathy for the ex, praising the calm honesty of the interview like it was a TED Talk instead of a potential hit piece. Others side-eyed the timing, calling it convenient, calculated, and suspiciously well-produced for someone just telling their truth. And right there, that split is where the chaos multiplied. Memes went from spicy to surgical. Screenshots of Chrisean smiling in old clips were captioned with ominous text. Laughing moments were reframed as mask slipping. Emotional breakdowns were replayed like crime scene footage. The internet doesn't just watch, it edits. And once it edits you into a villain, good luck escaping the director's cut. What really sent things into overdrive was how the interview clips were remixed. Someone slowed down her reactions in past videos. Someone else lined them up next to the ex's claims like a courtroom PowerPoint presentation. It didn't matter if the comparisons made sense. They looked convincing enough to go viral. That's the trick. Viral doesn't care about accuracy. Viral only cares about impact. Meanwhile, Chrisean still hadn't spoken, and the longer she stayed quiet, the louder everyone else became. People started speaking for her, over her, and about her like she wasn't even real, just a character in an ongoing drama series. Some defended her fiercely, claiming this was yet another example of a woman being punished for being emotional in public. Others treated the interview like a long-awaited confirmation of everything they already believed. The middle ground vanished instantly. Pop culture comparisons flooded timelines. People said this was the Amber and Johnny of reality chaos, AVH1 tragedy with HBO-level darkness. Love and hip-hop meets true crime. Hip-hop meets true crime. Someone even joked that this made celebrity divorces look like kindergarten disagreements. Laughs came quick, but they stuck in the throat. What made the situation even messier was the contradictions people started noticing. Not enough to clear anyone, but enough to confuse things. Dates didn't line up perfectly. Certain claims felt exaggerated compared to older footage. A few stories sounded oddly familiar, like they'd been recycled from previous internet rumors with new packaging. That's when conspiracy Twitter clocked in for its shift. Suddenly, people weren't just questioning Chrisean, they were questioning the interview itself. Who funded it? Who edited it? Why now? Why this platform? Why this tone? Why say I'm not attacking right before unloading verbal artillery? Speculation turned wild fast. Some believed this was a distraction. Others whispered about contracts, clout, revenge, and leverage. Screenshots of follower counts before and after the interview started circulating like stock charts. Every spike was treated as motive. And through it all, Chrisean became less human and more headline. Even supporters began saying things like, "I love her, but," which is the internet's polite way of sharpening the knife. Once "but" enters the sentence, you're already in trouble. Defense turns conditional. Loyalty turns cautious. The most brutal part. The humor never stopped. Jokes kept coming. Reaction videos piled up. People laughed, paused, laughed again, then judged. It was entertainment disguised as concern. Outrage packaged as content. Everyone got views. Everyone got engagement. Except Chrisean. She was trending, but she wasn't profiting. She was viral, but she wasn't in control. The interview had done what it was designed to do: shift the power. It didn't prove anything conclusively. It didn't need to. It planted just enough doubt to make people reevaluate everything they thought they knew. And when public perception starts wobbling, the ground underneath your image cracks. By the end of the second wave, the conversation wasn't even about what was said anymore. It was about what it meant, about patterns, about responsibility, about who gets believed and why, about how loud women are punished and how calm men are rewarded. That debate alone kept the story alive. Brands stayed silent. Collaborators avoided comments. Industry folks watched from a distance, calculating risk like accountants in a burning building. Nobody wanted to touch the story, but nobody could ignore it either. And still no response. At this point, silence wasn't just noticeable. It was strategic or catastrophic. Either she was preparing something massive, or she was being advised to disappear until the storm passed. Both options came with consequences, because here's the truth about the internet. If you don't tell your story, someone else will. And they won't be gentle. By the end of this phase, Chrisean's name carried a different weight. The chaos felt heavier. The jokes felt crueler. The narrative felt darker. And even people who wanted to defend her found themselves hesitating, waiting, refreshing, hoping for clarity. But clarity never comes when the internet is hungry, and just when it seemed like the story might plateau. Reality delivered the cruelest twist of all, the realization that no matter what Chrisean said next, it would be framed as a reaction, not the truth. Because once an explosive interview turns dark, the shadows linger. By the time the dust should have settled, it didn't, it thickened. That's the part nobody warns you about. Scandals don't actually mutate. They shed one headline and grow another, darker, sharper, and harder to escape. And for Chrisean Rock, this phase wasn't about the interview anymore. It was about the aftermath, the silent consequences that don't trend, but absolutely destroy. Because here's the brutal truth: once doubt enters the room, it never leaves quietly. The internet had already decided this was a turning point moment. Not because facts were confirmed, but because vibes shifted. And vibes, unfortunately, run the modern world. People stopped asking, "Is this true?" and started saying, "This explains a lot." That sentence alone is career poison. It sounds reasonable. It feels logical. And it gives people permission to judge without proof. Chrisean's reputation didn't collapse overnight, it eroded, like water wearing down stone. Slowly, silently, relentlessly. You could see it in the tone of comments. Where there used to be unconditional support, there was hesitation. Where there used to be jokes, there was moralizing. Where there used to be chaos as entertainment, there was chaos as warning. Fans didn't unfollow in protest. They lingered. They watched differently. And that's where industry reaction followed the same pattern. No public blacklisting. No dramatic announcements. Just distance. Quiet distance. The kind that doesn't make headlines but shows up when opportunities stop ringing. When rooms go silent. When "we'll circle back" becomes a permanent status. And through it all, the interview sat there, unchallenged, uncorrected, living online like a permanent exhibit. Every time Chrisean popped up, even for unrelated reasons, the interview resurfaced. New hair. Comment section dragged it back. New post. Someone quoted a clip. New moment of joy. Immediately reframed as denial, distraction, or deflection. The past glued itself to the present. That's the real punishment of viral controversy. You don't get to move on until the internet decides you're allowed to. What made it worse was the narrative that solidified around her silence. People stopped interpreting it as shock or strategy and started labeling it as avoidance. And once avoidance becomes the label, everything you do afterward is viewed through suspicion. If she spoke up, critics would say she was scrambling. If she stayed quiet, they'd say she was hiding. If she joked, she was insensitive. If she cried, she was manipulative. That's the trap. Once you're in it, there's no correct move, only damage control. Meanwhile, the ex's image benefited from contrast, calm, composed, reasonable. The internet loves that archetype. The quiet truth teller versus the loud, chaotic woman. It's an old storyline recycled so many times people don't even notice they're watching it again. And that's what made this situation feel darker than previous scandals. It wasn't just about personal drama. It tapped into something bigger, cultural, familiar, and comfortable. Chrisean became a symbol whether she wanted to or not. A warning story. A debate topic. A lesson people used to sound smart online. And symbols don't get empathy. They get analyzed. The irony is that none of this required new information. The interview didn't drop receipts. It didn't close loops. It didn't resolve timelines. But it didn't have to. It did something far more powerful. It reframed perception. Once perception changes, reality follows. The scary part. This wasn't a meltdown phase. No explosive response. No public crash out. No dramatic breakdown. Just pressure. Quiet, constant pressure. The kind that forces people to either retreat or transform. And that's where the real cliffhanger lives. Because silence doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it means someone is calculating. Sometimes it means lawyers are involved. Sometimes it means a response is being built piece by piece, waiting for the right moment to detonate. The internet assumed weakness. That's usually a mistake. History has shown time and time again that people written off too early tend to come back loud. But comebacks only work when the audience is still curious. And despite the judgment, the outrage, and the memes, curiosity hadn't died. If anything, it grew. People wanted to know her side. Not the emotional version. Not the chaotic live version. The composed version. The controlled narrative. The version that explains, reframes, and exposes motivations on the other side, because cracks were forming in the interview's armor. Not enough to flip the story, but enough to make people wonder. Why now? Why this platform? Why this tone? Why imply instead of state? Why speak calmly but leave so many doors open? Questions like that don't disappear. They wait. And scandals don't end when attention fades. They end when someone takes control of the narrative again. Right now, that control was missing. But not gone. The internet loves to crown villains fast. It loves to rewrite people faster. But it loves redemption arcs even more. Especially when the fall felt public, unfair, or incomplete. So here's the truth nobody wants to admit yet. This story isn't finished. Not even close. The interview may have turned dark, but darkness always creates contrast. And contrast is where reversals live. Whether Chrisean rises from this moment stronger, smarter, and sharper, or disappears under the weight of public doubt depends on what comes next. And whatever comes next won't be quiet. Because when someone is caught off guard in front of the world, they either break or they reload. And the internet is watching, waiting, refreshing. Knowing full well this scandal isn't the finale. And this right here is why you never blink when the internet goes quiet. Because silence doesn't mean peace. It means the next bomb is loading. If you thought this interview was the end of the story, you haven't been paying attention. This is how scandals evolve. They don't explode once they echo. Now I want to hear you. Was this interview a long overdue truth bomb? Or a perfectly timed character hit dressed up as my side of the story? Did Chrisean stay silent because she was guilty or because she was smart enough not to feed the wolves? Drop your take in the comments, because the real trial always happens down there. And you'll never disappoint. If this breakdown had you glued to the screen, do me a favor, smash that like button like it owes you money. Do me a favor, smash that like button like it owes you money.